think you're playing football? Do you think you're playing football? Do you think you're playing football? You are showing me nothing.
Fires, Mike Sims, Walker, knocked down.
Oh my God! Davis is going running all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
In trouble, he's going to be sacked. No, gets away. He runs, gets away again, goes to the 40, gets away again.
Jackson takes it himself. Look at him turn back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankles.
I have never seen this before in my life.
Still looking, firing, near corner. It's caught.
Denver, unbelievable.
And welcome to the Fourth Down Fiasco.
Hello and welcome back to Fourth Down Fiasco, your go-to podcast for an in-depth exploration of all things football. This week we'll be talking about possible new jerseys coming next season in the NFL. There are, I think, 6 rumored teams. And then we'll also be launching FANBASE Fiasco. So today we'll have 2 interviews, one from a Buffalo Bills correspondent and one from a Dallas Cowboys correspondent. So stick around for that. But with me today is only Tanner for this first segment.
R.I.P. Jordan.
R.I.P. Jordan, yep. You'll see him later on, but for the jerseys, he had to skip out because he said he's busy or something. I don't believe him, but
He's a liar.
yeah. But with that said, let's just hop into it. So the 6 teams that I have rumored to get new jerseys are the Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, Seattle Seahawks, Tennessee Titans, and confirmed New York Jets.
So, I mean, with those 6, I mean, who do you feel like was the most in desperate need of a rework?
In desperate need, I did not like the Jets all that much because I remember when they got announced a couple years ago, they got mocked for being what was it, the CFL team?
Oh yeah, what is that CFL team?
Saskatchewan something. We should have Googled that before.
I got it. I'll find it.
But also the Denver Broncos. I hate their mismatched color stripe on their pants and their jersey.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. I haven't been a fan of like the Broncos. Honestly, I haven't been a fan of the Broncos jerseys like my whole life.
I like their numbering. I remember in like Madden 04 when you used to be able to create your own team, I'd always use the Broncos number palette.
Yeah.
So their numbers are nice, but the rest of their uniform just needs a redesign.
It is the Saskatchewan Rough Riders.
The Rough Riders. Yeah, they had the little like winglets almost.
They are currently 6-12.
That's better than the Giants.
That's true.
Or not the Giants, the Jets.
The Jets. Yeah, then the Jets. Did they end with 4 wins or 5 wins?
4 or 5, not 6.
Poor bastards.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we are completely wrong. They had 7 wins last year.
The Jets had 7 wins.
The Jets had 7 wins.
How?
Well, they beat the Bills in week 1. I mean,
oh yeah, I remember.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. What was it? Whitehead. He got his pick incentive week 1. He got a $125,000 bonus if he got 3 picks throughout the season, and he got 3 in week 1.
Yeah, they finished the year going 4-2. They had a winning record.
Good for them.
In their last 6 games.
I'm sorry, any Jets fans.
Yeah, never mind. They are better than the Rough Riders, apparently.
But I'm shocked to see Tennessee on this list, to be honest, even if they're just rumored, because, what was it, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they got new jerseys?
And I kind of like their jerseys, honestly.
I think it's pretty clean. Maybe they'll just bring out a 4th jersey. I don't think they have a 4th one. Do they? No, they do, because the Oilers. I don't know. Maybe they'll rework their alternate a little bit. But
maybe they're gonna try to get away from the shoulder pads. Kind of like the gray on the shoulder pads. Maybe that. Because that's the only thing I don't really like about their jerseys.
Yeah, maybe they'll just.
But I do like the numbering, and I like the font. The dark blue's nice. It's different than all the other blue teams.
Yeah, I saw a thing. It said sports teams need to move away from red, white, and blue.
I know that's like the only options.
Yeah, I wonder what the percentage of professional sports teams are just red, white, and blue.
I mean, even think about like, so I was talking to this, obviously with the, people from Utah here, and they all complain about, the Jazz New jerseys because they're terrible. They look like highlighters. And they were talking about like why not just stay with the old '90s kind of like purple look, and that there's only one other purple team in the NBA. It's just the Kings.
Yeah. And
then there's kind of the Raptors, but the Raptors moved to a red.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, with the Raptors moving to like a red and a black, how many red teams are there in the NBA? And I think half the league is red.
Yeah.
In the NBA. Like, it is a huge portion of the NBA is red jerseys. So,
and you could probably say that about every professional sports league besides MLS in the United States. Baseball, you have a lot of red and blue. Football, you have a lot of red and blue. You just said basketball is half, and what's the fourth one? Hockey. Oh, I don't know much, but I don't know about the hockey colors. No,
the hockey colors actually are
they're
little
pretty
diverse.
Yeah. You have there's quite a bit of red.
There is a bit of red,
but it's not as bad as the other three.
But even like the recent expanded hockey teams did a really great job of marketing.
Oh yeah,
like of standing out because I mean, the Golden Knights are a completely unique color scheme, and then same with the Kraken.
Yeah, I love the Kraken's uniforms and the Knights uniforms.
Yeah, they're both really good.
Yeah. I saw rumors about the Broncos jerseys that they're going to bring in a fourth color to their team, and it's going to be like a grayish blue to represent snow-capped mountains. And they're talking about having like a mountain range on the shoulder pads.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
that sounds horrible.
It's if I saw some renders, I wish I had the picture, and they didn't look horrible, but it didn't look like an NFL team. But
that's the thing is like if you put like mountains on like a state flag, that's like really good design. It's like, oh, that's gonna look really clean on just like a square backdrop.
Yeah.
But on a jersey, I feel like that's gonna be a pretty tough sell.
Yeah.
Even like think about even the NBA teams that got really creative with their jerseys, like the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns, when they were going for that valley look and they were going for the sunset looks. They didn't use geography in the jersey, but they were able to paint the picture of geography through the gradient of the colors.
Yeah. The only spots I would be, depending on how they pulled it off, where I'd be okay if there was like a mountain range, would be on the sleeve, like around the edge of the sleeve.
Like a tattoo.
Yeah, basically. Just like wrap it around the sleeve. Or even, it wouldn't look right for football, but at the bottom, like coming up from the waist. But that still have to be so faint that it'd be like, you'd have to be up close to see it.
It's one of those things where I feel like NFL teams try too hard to modernize. And again, you want a modern look. But I think most people, when you ask them, like, what are your favorite jerseys? People go, oh, the old school Toronto Raptors jersey.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Oilers. People always point to the Oilers as really good jerseys. They point to the old school, like the 90s Broncos had really clean jerseys.
I think... I don't know if it's... I don't know the demographic of a lot of like the sports these days. But I feel like it's a lot of people our age who weren't able to see them live. Like we've only got to witness it.
They look back and they see them and they're like, wow, those jerseys were sick.
Like bring them back. Like why not?
I mean, like even think like we talked about the Jazz earlier, but think about like the 90s Jazz jerseys with like John Stockton and Karl Malone. Those jerseys were sweet.
Yeah.
And that is actually an example of a jersey that did have mountains on it.
I was just
that actually
about
looked
to say
clean.
that. Yeah. But I think basketball is a little easier than football to make mountains work. But yeah, so I'll be very curious to see if those rumors about the grayish blue in the mountains come true with the Broncos. But I just hope, my one wish is they get rid of those mismatched stripes on the side.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either.
They could bring back the throwback logo too. I wouldn't be mad. With the horse and the D jumping, the horse jumping out.
The big D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lions, I saw a mix of like a modern throwback, which kind of looked interesting, but there's not much to really change on the Lions.
I honestly don't think the Lions need it.
They don't need it, but they'd make money off it.
I mean, yeah, they would, but I think the Lions have one of the more clean looks in the NFL.
Me too. They could
Like, I mean, if we were going to rank... Sorry, go for it.
No, I was going to say bring in a different helmet, maybe. Like, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know, but I like the gray and blue. Like,
yeah.
Or the silver and blue, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know what they'd really do to make it...
They could go white, but then I feel like that doesn't make them as unique, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, but like if you were to rank jerseys, I mean, the Lions would probably fall in your top 10, right?
Probably.
Like if you were just ranking home jerseys, I mean, they'd probably be somewhere in that range for me too. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll look better, but that's a weird one to get new jerseys for.
Yeah, I would not. They'd have to really wow me for it to be a thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this list of top jerseys throughout the NFL that someone made. They have the Broncos at 6, the Raiders at 1. All right, I'm not looking at this list anymore.
I mean, the Raiders have an iconic jersey though. It's very clean. It's very simple.
That's true.
I can see why somebody would have that as their favorite jersey.
But yeah, Texans. I've heard rumors of baby blue coming back a little bit, like Oiler blue.
That could be cool, but then again, you're competing with the Titans color scheme, and again, that's just an issue because the Oilers moved from Tennessee and they took the rights, so you have like this big issue of Houston not having their old identity, but you don't want to copy Tennessee either. I don't know.
But I heard someone say they should bring back the World Football League Houston Texans logo, the yellow and green one.
Yeah.
They could rework the logo a little bit. The H is kind of funky. It's kind of thick.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. I'm looking at it right now, and the H is... I mean, it kind of almost looks like a patio chair.
Yeah.
More than an H.
It's a little funky.
So they could switch that up a little bit. But other than that, I mean, I do like the color scheme, and I like the concept. Mm-hmm. I think just with a modern look, that could be a cool new logo. But I don't really hate the Houston Texans logo, honestly.
Me neither. Would you... With how many... I don't know how many teams exactly, but would you like to see kind of how the Vikings have a Viking horn on the side? Would you want to see a bull horn go off the sides of the Texans helmet?
I think that could work. I think some other teams probably would do it better. I think some of the bird teams have a really easy out on that.
Yeah.
You know, I know the Eagles do that a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's the main thing for the Eagles. Yeah. The Eagles do it. The Vikings do it. The Falcons do not do it. Seahawks kind of do it, like reverse.
Oh, duh. The Eagles' main thing literally is that. I don't know why in my head I was visioning just the Eagles logo on the side.
No.
Yeah.
Seahawks. They were the first team to get redesigned, and they're up for it again. What direction would you want to see them go?
I would like to see them honestly go closer to just what they had back in the early 2000s with the silver and the blue. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people like the blue and green. I think they kind of clash, and I really don't like the highlighter green color rush.
They did get rid of that color rush, so
yeah,
you're okay.
So I know that's gone, but that better not be the redesign because I don't like the blue and the bright green together. I know some people do. It just feels, I don't know, it feels like very 2010s, and I don't know if that's just like because that's when the Seahawks were dominant.
Yeah.
But it just feels so out of date and kind of tacky.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they go back to the silver and the blue, I think that's a really sweet like jersey combo, and I really like those colors. Or I'd like to see them move closer to like the Kraken's colors if they want to keep the blue and the green.
Yeah, I feel like they could lighten up the blue like they had with the throwback this year. And I think if they could work in that green and accent-wise, not in like main jersey color, I think it could end up looking pretty nice. There are a couple renderings floating around that look pretty clean. Their big change was their number design number font got redesigned, which looked pretty clean. It was a more blocky design. But yeah, I hope they brought back their throwback this year, and I kind of hope they just kind of embrace it.
I agree. I think I would like for them to see just going full throwback, and then you can have like the current jerseys be the alternate.
Yeah, seriously. Like just have you could have the wolf gray as their like now their
color
new
rush.
throwback. Yeah.
I don't mind the wolf gray. I think it works better than a lot of other teams that try gray.
Yeah.
I think they do it a little bit better than most other teams, but I'm also not super crazy about the full gray jersey. I think I like Detroit's a little bit more. I think Detroit does better with the gray color scheme than Seattle does.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I like the throwbacks a lot, and I think if they keep the throwback, that's going to be, I don't know. That's the best way to differentiate themselves from all the blue teams in the NFL, right?
Yeah. I don't think anyone has that silver and light blue with a little bit of green. But everyone was a big fan of their throwbacks this year. Everyone was excited for them. They were probably up there with the most hyped throwback, along with that Kelly Green, just because the Eagles had the fandom behind them. But the last jersey we talked about how we don't like their current ones in the beginning. But the Jets, I heard they're leaning more towards the legacy, like their white one. And if they do that, I think it'll be very clean. And no one will make fun of them for being a Canadian football team again.
Yeah, and I think the Jets have an easy one just because how many green teams are there? Is it just them and the Eagles? That's it, right?
If you count the
and
Seahawks
the Packers.
And the Packers.
Yeah, so they have it easy. I mean, if they lean into the white or if they lean into their older green that they had before they just did the jersey rework, I don't think they can go wrong. Again, they're one of the teams that they don't have to stand out too much just because they're one of 3 teams that wear green.
Yeah.
It's not like the Seahawks that have to stand out a little bit more because there's 6 other teams that are dark blue.
Yeah. And I hope they bring back just the Jets script, like just the JTS with the line above the ETS.
Yep.
Like the throwback logo. I want them to just keep that.
I agree.
But yeah. So let us know what team should have got new jerseys that are not on this list, or what team you are excited to hear or excited to see what their new jerseys will look like. Or just let us know your opinion on whatever we just talked about. But with that being said, we will send it over to our first FANBASE Fiasco interview.
Woo woo.
You're the proud owner of a business, and you've got it all. The hustle, the bustle, and the occasional office kitchen mishap that turns into an alarm-triggering emergency.
Whoa!
But fear not. Western States Fire Protection is here to turn your workplace into a disaster-free zone. Our in-house team handles everything from fire sprinklers to alarms, monitoring, inspections, extinguishers, and more. Visit WSFP.com to request a quote. Because when your microwave thinks it's a flamethrower, we're the heroes you need.
Are you looking for a podcast to advertise your business? Well, you're in luck. Here at the Fourth Down Fiasco, we're looking for show sponsors. Whether you want to be a platinum sponsor and be mentioned at the beginning and end of every episode, or you just want a simple 30 or 60-second ad, we got you covered. If you're interested in having a spot on our show, you can reach us at fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. That's fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. We are excited to hear from you and even more excited to have you on the show. Join the Fiasco family now.
Yeah. Hey. They tell the truth. How you settle in? Your team is veterans. So how you cope with where you sit this season? Better spin, better rhetoric. A tale as great as teams have been. I ask the question of you now to see the thoughts you spin. FANBASE Fiasco. Don't think that I'm irrational. My team better than your team, and that's just facts, bro. We've been examples. Don't think this year don't mean much. This legacy you talking about. Let me tell you about my team, son.
Hell yeah, we got an intro song for this. That song is brought to you by author, poet, and musician Cam Hayden. You can get his book, Working on the Process, which contains beautiful poetry capturing the experience of self-reflection and transition into adulthood on Amazon. You can also check out his YouTube channel, Just Cam Hayden, which takes a deep dive into politics and social justice topics. With that, welcome to the first edition of the FANBASE Fiasco, our off-season segment dedicated to you, the fans, who are the most important part of every team. We said on a recent pod that we wanted to build a community, and this is how we plan to do it, by letting the everyday fans speak to the highs and lows of the franchise they love. And this week we are blessed with the presence of Bills fanatic Glenn Goodberry, owner of the brand Bills on the Brain. How are you, Glenn?
I'm good, Jordan. How are you?
Doing great, man. We're excited to have you. You're our first aired interview.
Yeah, I'm proud to see that.
You can put that on your wall of awards and other fun stuff you have in the background. Because again, you have a sweet setup, dude. Yeah. I'm jealous.
I appreciate that.
Ultimate man.
I'm lucky I have a nice wife. So.
Fair enough. So listen, I got to dive into the hard hitting stuff first. What kind of voodoo magic does Andy Reid have on the Bills?
Voodoo magic. Andy Reid is just Andy Reid. Andy Reid has been able to sort of get it done his entire career, and then now he's got a Patrick Mahomes, and the Patrick Mahomes kind of storms the league. And if you're not effective and efficient against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they will make you pay, especially in the postseason.
That is true.
Fair enough.
All right. So that's the hard-hitting question. Yes, he switched up from the one I sent you, but
I couldn't let him have a pre-planned answer.
Dang. Next time. But so
you still sort of got my pre-planned answer, by the way.
Yeah, it still worked out for you, but it's fine.
Yeah. But so how did you become a Bills fan?
So born and raised Western New York, as we call our region. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills are our hometown team. They don't play in Buffalo. They play in Orchard Park. But like I said, we're sort of a regional team. We've got, Canada. We've got Western New York. We've got Syracuse, just outside of Western New York. And personally, my father was a Bills fan growing up. My earliest memories are those 4 Super Bowl losses. I remember parades at school. See, I'm almost 40 years old. So I was in elementary school in the early 90s. And we were doing parades. I had a full, one of those, hutch. Actually, I got a helmet back there. They came with the helmet, the shoulder pads, the jersey, and the pants. And mine was number 12, Jim Kelly. It said Buffalo Bills. I remember wearing that to school.
Nice.
And that's what my Bills hype, the Bills hype of the early 90s started my fandom and my father.
And once you're hooked,
and let me get this straight. Your brother is a Bengals fan?
Yeah. Yeah, my brother, sort of, again, those early 90s, the Bengals, Boomer Esiason, they had cool helmets, obviously. The rumor is my mom had a crush on Boomer Esiason. She thought he was handsome. And my brother picks teams that are sort of anti-household. He didn't like the Bills. He didn't like the Sabres. So he ended up liking the Bengals. Obviously, they got cool colors. And they were kind of good at the time. And the Bills and Bengals always sort of had the same trajectory, minus the Bills' 17-year drought. But the Bengals still were sort of in that funk, right? They haven't had a playoff win before they beat the Raiders at the wild card weekend a couple years ago, in almost 30 years or 30 years.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know, my brother's gained this sort of following on Twitter. He's got his own show. He's sort of got this thing going on, and it's sort of evolved for him and also for me with this sort of on the brain stuff. And we've just been fans of our teams for 30 plus years.
What is the background for on the brain? I mean, you guys both have similar logos with the skull and his is the stripes, but yours is the Bills. How did that come about?
He started the on the brain stuff, so it was Bengals on the brain. It started with a drawing he did, and it was his profile picture on Twitter some 10 years ago, literally a hand-drawn picture that he put up. He was just sort of going off that little sort of graphic for his profile picture, and people were starting to recognize it. And around the COVID year, 2020, if that didn't bring the hustle out of you, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's make some shirts and hats. So he's like, all right, let's do it. So I made 50 shirts on my dining room table here for him. And he ordered some hats and, sold those. They sold fairly quickly. And he said to me, here's a buffalo on the Brain logo for you. He emailed it to me.
Nice.
And then so I started running with that too. And we sort of built this sort of On the Brain brand just between the two teams at this point. But eventually maybe it's something we can branch out.
Yeah.
But it's been sort of fun. It's, we're doing some hats and designs, and I like to doodle. We both are artistic in some sense. And, if I can't do it, I'll teach myself. So I've been teaching myself some graphic art and doodling and making things happen. And it's sort of been, kind of growing a little bit over these last few years. But it's been fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I will say I love the bottom of the brim. Yeah. The
Zubaz?
Yeah. It's not many hats go that direction, but I'm glad you and your brother did do that.
Yeah, so that we were wondering what could set us apart a little bit too, like under brim, what type of designs can we do? We're very heavy into sports. We liked baseball too, and sort of like the green under brim was always something stood out to us for some weird reason. And Joe started doing a football field underneath as a green under brim. Mm-hmm. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so it was he's got yard markers. He's also got Bengal stripes too on other styles he's developed. But with the Bills, we've worn the early 90s, mid 90s Zubaz, red, white, and blue striped stuff. Every team had their own version of it back in the day. Mm-hmm. The Bills just kept it going. And so I was like, you know what? I'll throw a little bit of stripes underneath the brim of my hat, the Zubaz stripes, and just kind of went with it. And it stood out to people. And, they kind of liked it a little bit, even though maybe one day I'll get officially licensed. We'll see through Zubaz. But
fingers crossed. So you mentioned Chad Kelly a little bit about when you were during the Super Bowl run. But so who was your favorite player to watch throughout your lifetime?
Yeah, so obviously we've got, my favorite team being the Bills. You got your obvious choices, but I really sort of attracted towards watching Brett Favre play in the 90s. Oh. So growing up, football player, one of my favorites was Brett Favre. I ended up having a little bit of an affinity for the Packers because of it, but always was a Bills fan. Back in those days, before Twitter, and you got roasted if you veered anywhere towards another team and you were just a genuine football fan, you could play as other teams on Madden and not get dragged. Yeah. Some people do. But Twitter tells you have to have your line in the sand and have your favorite team. But I was a Brett Favre fan. I had Randy Moss jerseys, both Manning brother jersey. My jersey,
you just love ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably have 150 jerseys in my collection of not just Bills and Sabres and Atlanta Braves. I'm a Braves fan. But Brett Favre was my favorite player growing up. I mean, he's had his troubles. I mean, he went through them publicly back in the 90s with drugs, but now he's in some different stuff these days. And, but watching him, the player on the field was, one of my favorites.
Yeah, he was something special.
Yeah. He could sling. He could sling for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Adjusting focus just a little bit towards how the Bills did this past season, kicking it back to school a little bit, basically, A through F, what would you grade the Bills season?
I would give them an A-.
Okay.
Coming into the year, I was projecting 10, 11 wins for them. When they were 6-6, I was like, I don't think they're going to hit that. And then they go on their stride and they win 11 games. They change their offensive coordinator. Josh Allen gets in a little bit more of a rhythm. They look a little more focused and oriented as in, what they're specifically trying to do. Excuse me. And, being short of making an AFC Championship game and a Super Bowl, at that 6-6 point, they kind of started overachieving a little bit or playing to what they should have been. Like a lot of people had them written off.
Yeah.
And we were like, they got to go on a run. They probably have to win the next 10, 11 games if they want to win the Super Bowl. They have to win them straight, which is difficult for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw, the Eagles collapse after their 10th win, and it's just difficult to do. But given the early season woes Ken Dorsey sort of had, even last year, there was a little bit different. Some people want to say Josh Allen regressed, but I think it was more of a stylistic sort of offensive philosophy they had under Ken Dorsey.
Mm-hmm.
But, I do think they finished strong. Obviously, I want them to win a Super Bowl. There's a lot of that pressure on Josh and the Bills to do that. But that's why I give them an A-, because they really sort of came back to win the East, took it from Miami, who held on to it for most of the year, and, won a playoff game again. And we're close against the Chiefs. The here and there, missed field goal. There's some things that, could have stopped them from even worrying about that field goal. But, just a point for it.
I guess to dive in just a little bit deeper with that, what would you say is the cause of maybe some of these playoff hiccups?
They really have an execution problem. They have, sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's offensive, and a lot of the time it's defensive. They'll get these leads. Josh Allen will walk off the field, even some regular season games with the lead, and the Bills' defense and the way they're playing defense, that soft zone, safeties deep, they're letting them pick them apart up front, especially somebody like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And driving the field. This last playoff game, if the Bills would have made that kick, they would have given Pat Mahomes just about 2 minutes to drive the field, and all they would have needed was a field goal. Yeah. And it was stressful, to think about that again, because you see that 13-second game where they were just soft again. Mm-hmm. They could have beat the Chiefs this year with a little bit more execution. Obviously, there was a drop pass by Diggs. There was Josh Allen feeling the pressure from Jones and short hop that ball to Shakir on that, right in front of the post in the end zone. There was missed opportunity. And there was another big deep ball dropped by Sherfield. He had to dive a little bit and stretch for that, but still hit him right in the hands. Could have caught it, but yeah.
To play against Kansas City, you have to play almost a perfect game, and
you
have to play perfect against a perfect team, and it's just hard. But we talked about that missed field goal with the 2 minutes left a couple weeks ago. It seemed like they didn't even care about how much time was left. Like, they didn't manage the clock at all that drive. Like, they just went down, and then Allen got panicked and threw 2 balls to the end zone, and then. I mean, in today's NFL, a 40-something yard field goal should be almost an automatic make, so that's probably what's in the back of his head. But it seemed to us, you can't leave 2 minutes on the clock.
No, especially with Pat Mahomes. Some of the interviews from this weekend with Josh Allen, he was like, you're on offense, our objective is to score. And if there's an opportunity for us to score, we're trying to score. We're aware of the clock, but, as a team game, you need your defense to step up and make a play if you can get that score. Mm-hmm. So he was throwing for that, in my opinion, was the correct read. You see some replays, there's Diggs underneath, would have been stopped, could have ran the clock a little more. Regardless, Shakir was open, and Chris Jones, who also made a big impact last night in the Super Bowl, was very disruptive, and he pushed Deion Dawkins, our Pro Bowl All-Pro left tackle, right back into Josh and totally disrupted his throw to Shakir, something that Josh makes all the time.
Yeah. You talked about the pressure on Allen to get to the Super Bowl a little bit, but can Josh Allen take the Bills to the Super Bowl, or what does he need for that to happen?
I think Josh can take can lead the team to the Super Bowl. And I say it specifically that way because he does need his supporting cast to be able to step up in these situations. Stephon Diggs against the Cincinnati Bengals, everybody knows he looked a little upset, and it was give me the ball. You want me to make a play? We need to make plays. Give me the ball. Mm-hmm. Fast forward a year, same divisional round, Kansas City Chiefs. You give them the ball. Josh Allen throws a 66-yard ball in the air, hits him in the hands. Sure, he had to slow up a little bit, but the ball was right there.
Yeah. That
catch changes the game a little bit. Mm-hmm. So you need your supporting cast, and it's not just that Diggs drop either. Defense needs to make a stop. It's tough to do against Patrick Mahomes to make a stop. You need to figure something out in that capacity because, like you said, you need to play a flawless game. You need to maximize your opportunities, and you need to maximize, which includes maximizing any defensive stops you can get against Patrick Mahomes. You need to have points. If you can get him to punt, if you can get a turnover, very rare, it's tough to sack him. You got to be able to score some points on that. You can't walk off the field with no points after that.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Diggs. I do know over the years there has been almost, it seems like, a tension with Diggs and teammates and everything. What is the, fan base general consensus of how they feel about Diggs?
The fan base loves Diggs. Mm-hmm. Seeing his interviews on a weekly basis and the same questions, and we sort of understand where he's coming from. Like, he answered those questions after OTAs, minicamp, they had that falling out last year, and then the questions came up just before training camp, and that he was able to sit there and answer them, and he did. But the media just wants more. They want it, they want something. They want to fish. They want to throw darts at something. So they're going to keep asking him. But also, I think he's got a little bit of he wants to play the relevancy side of it. And he was just asked at the Pro Bowl, and he was and the Super Bowl week Radio Row, he was sort of coy about it. Whatever happens, happens. The business side. The point is, he's not going anywhere. He's got a huge cap hit against the Bills. He's still a valuable, viable player for the Buffalo Bills and one of the league's top wide receivers. Mm. So he's, the fan base, to answer your question, I think is still positive about him and looking forward to his impact next year. And I agree with that. I think he needs to be on this team. And I think, typically he's pretty sharp, but, he's got to get out of his ways sometimes. And I just think he wants to stay relevant in the offseason, so he keeps people guessing.
As do most professional athletes.
Yeah.
Before we jump into about the offseason and next year, what was your favorite moment and least favorite moment of this past season?
So I had a couple. I had that win against Miami in week 4. We were at home. It really felt good. Miami was hot. They just came off that huge beat down at Denver, 70 points. They come into Buffalo, and Buffalo stomps them, and we don't like Miami as it is.
Yeah.
And this was before the Bills lost a bunch, lost to injuries, and it was just like the Bills are 3-1 at this point, just manhandling Miami. Mm-hmm. And I thoroughly enjoyed that game. I enjoyed that game so much. And I also enjoyed the second game against Miami when they won the East. I had so much fun watching those two games and just sitting there and rooting for them. And then I went to the Steelers playoff game, and I was at the Chiefs playoff game. A lot of fun at the Steeler game, not so much fun at the Chiefs game.
Fair enough. I've heard that Arrowhead gets. Did you go actually to Arrowhead for that game?
It was here in Buffalo this year.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad. I was gonna say I've heard stories about Arrowhead, but then I guess you wouldn't.
And they play Arrowhead every year anyway, so it's I understand why you could assume that.
How many feet of snow was your seat covered in?
So so it's funny I would say about 70% of the stadium for the Steeler game was shoveled. The other 30% was not, and that was hit or miss. My row was shoveled, but behind me had enough snow. It was probably about 3-4 feet of snow.
Wow.
I took a photo of myself plopped in it like this, in the row behind me. And it was pretty intense, man. Like, there was people just like shoving the snow, packing it down with their feet. And everybody stood the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like, the snow was wild. And then for that KC game, they had to shovel out the stadium again because they got hammered. But I took another photo on my way in. Snow was up about my head, and I'm 6 feet tall.
Wow.
So it was about, nose height for me. So 5.5 feet.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. I've never seen that much snow in my life.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah. But so going into the off season, what are some moves that you want to see the Bills make this year, both in the free agency market as well as drafts?
Sure. I don't think they're going to be huge players in the free agency market. They've got some salary cap that they've got to clear up. Now, I'm not a salary cap wizard by any means. We've got some great Bills coverage that does all that. But I do think they need to clean some of that up. We need to try to retain whatever defensive line, young talent we can retain. There's a lot of free agents on the defensive line the Bills need to handle. If they can bring somebody in from free agency that's not already on the Bills, I'm hoping for a wide receiver. I would like Tyler Boyd. You're a Bengals fan. I would like somebody like that. You know what I mean? We need a little bit of depth. If there's injury, Davis is going to probably go test the market and probably sign somewhere for some big money, which is fine. Khalil Shakir is really emerging. I think in the draft, the Bills also need to use their first-round pick on a wide receiver. The talent pool is deep this year. Again, I'm a draft guy, but wide receivers have caught my attention this year for the most part. I'm going to do a little bit more digging now that the season's over with, and we've got the combine coming up. I'm not a huge college football guy either, but I do know and understand wide receiver this year is probably,
it's deep.
Yeah, it's deep. So the Bills need to go get something. They need to get Josh some weapons where they can attack. And, the Bills were one of the teams that dropped the most passes in the league this year. Kansas City was up there, was number one from what I understand, but they were still effective. Again, their postseason, though, they really turned it on. Yeah. And I think that's where Buffalo sort of does the opposite. They can show up, especially they like to come out of their bye week almost 500 and then go on a winning streak. They've won a ton of games in December the last 4 years to win their division, and then the playoffs, they seem to sort of fizz out a little bit because I feel like they get a little burnout. But wide receiver is big on my list for them.
Fair enough. I mean, it is a very deep position. I'm trying to remember, what is his name from UT? Xavier Worthy, dude. If he is around by the time y'all pick, I think he would be so much fun to pair up with Josh Allen just because of the speed, the shiftiness. Yep. I think he would just be an excellent weapon for y'all. So I would hate to see him not go anywhere other than a Texas team, being a Texas person. But at the end of the day, if I was going to pair him up with a quarterback, I would definitely go Josh Allen for that one.
Bills could use somebody with some speed. That's something they really do lack is speed. Oh, yeah. And it would be nice.
He's got jets. He's got jets.
And that's, he needs something like that. Josh can sling that thing. So if he can, he overthrows guys. I'm sure that the highlights, if you guys are watching or some of the games you tune into, you've seen Josh overthrow a few guys. It's somebody that he can't overthrow would be nice.
Yeah. You mentioned Tyler Boyd. I would love Tyler Boyd to come back to Cincinnati, but it seems kind of like storybook for him to go to Buffalo, especially what happened in 2015?
2017.
Yeah. Yeah. The Raven Killer to send you guys to the playoffs.
Yeah. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, for him to go to a team, I'd be fine with Buffalo.
Sure.
And he would help with the drops. He has one of, for slot receivers, he has the least amount of drops in the NFL over his course of his career.
Yeah.
So he's a very good hands guy.
Yeah, and I think, the Bengals and Bills have a funny thing. And I joke about it, and I joke a little bit. You know, my edges can be rough, but I joke with my brother, and I call them the Bills and Bengals are like Eskimo brothers when it comes to popping players, because they do it all the time, and it's like, it's kind of funny. And excuse my joke if
no, that's great. No, this is the pod for that kind of stuff. I promise you.
Yeah,
the Bengals and Bills are Eskimo brothers, man. Like, it's been like that way, and I joke with my brother, obviously, because he's a Bengals fan, you know, in that regard, because, you know, we're always like on the same wavelength, or like swapping players out. And, you know, it's kind of funny. And I think it could be, you know, ironic and something that could realistically happen, that Tyler Boyd at least could make a visit to Buffalo in free agency. And the Bills could use somebody like him. I mean, he could play the slot. Shakir, you know, people are saying he's a slot guy, and Kincaid could be a slot guy. But also, the Bills like to move their guys around. Diggs, they like to disguise some stuff. Diggs will line up in the slot. He'll line up outside. So I could see him, if they can get out there and get open in space, you know, the Bills are going to utilize it. And I think Boyd would be, you know, the tall body with some sure hands that the Bills could rely on.
Yeah. So talking about offseason and possible players, so what does success look like for next season?
Success looks like a divisional round win. You know, anything short is just, you know, spinning our tires again. Obviously, I'd like to see the Bills win the AFC East for a fifth consecutive season. Consistency in that capacity is hard. They almost, you know, didn't do it for the fourth straight year because Miami was on a run.
Yeah.
We'll see Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and if the Dolphins can continue, you know, sort of being a regular season stud like they are, and maybe they flame out in December again. But they need an AFC Championship game, and I think they need a Super Bowl appearance. And you know, as much as I hate saying a Super Bowl appearance because I want them to win it, I would, thinking about the Niners last night and putting myself in that position, especially because they did very much what the Bills do, is they gave Patrick Mahomes too much time to beat them in the biggest game of their lives in the season. And just thinking to myself, like, man, I can't do these crushing losses anymore. I got PTSD. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that one.
Yeah. So it's just anything short of an AFC Championship game, but I think they need to go to a Super Bowl, win or loss. They need to make that appearance, and Josh needs to get to that next level. He needs to lead his team. I hate wins and losses or a QB stat type thing. QBs are the single most important position on the team, and they can facilitate and dictate a lot of those wins and losses. But, you know, it takes a team, because Josh has walked off the field a lot, as I've said earlier in this interview, with the lead to just for that team to lose the game.
Yeah, even the last playoff game, he had 3 touchdowns. He had all of your touchdowns against the Chiefs. Yeah. He played excellent football. Something best this year.
He didn't play the flashy style that fantasy football fans are like. Yeah. Oh, again, we're in this Twitter era of football fan, and they want to see the you know, these big numbers. But the thing is, they did something to Kansas City that a lot of these other teams haven't been able to do. And if you've watched the playoffs, including the Super Bowl, the Bills had a very good sort of approach and attack against Kansas City, where it was run and then passes behind the line of scrimmage and making those plays and trying to sustain drives and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands.
Yeah.
Josh did ball out that game, 2 rushing TDs, a passing. He was just sort of unstoppable, and that's what you needed from him. But also, again, when the other numbers are called, you need those players to make the one play. Josh is making 20 plays. You need somebody that can make 2 or 3 in the playoffs. Who's going to make that play? Who's going to be that guy? And that's what separates you. And Kansas City always has that guy that's going to separate himself. Mm-hmm. The Bengals make their Super Bowl run. They had a few guys that separated themselves. that defense really balled out. Like, you need that. The Buffalo defense you need that from them. They can have a great regular season, ranked in the top 5, and then in the playoffs, they're just getting shredded, and it gets frustrating.
Yeah. So, yeah. But to end it off, we have one last question. And
sure.
Now it's just another opinion-based question like the rest of them. But what player in your team's past do you wish you could have seen play?
So I've seen the Bills in their glory years. I'm talking the early 90s. So I watched most of those players. And it's a little faux pas because of who he is off the football field, but O.J. Simpson.
I'm not even mad.
Talk about O.J. pre-1990. Buffalo Bills, O.J. Simpson, breaking those records. And the Bills opened their new stadium, which you guys, I'm sure, are aware we're getting a new stadium right now. He played at the original Rock Pile, which was in downtown Buffalo, and then opened up in this new stadium and broke the rushing record, and just sort of that era. Even though the Dolphins were really dominant in the 70s and the Bills were on sort of that, as we're accustomed to, that Patriots drought, they were on their Dolphins drought those years. Like, I would love to have seen OJ pre-knowing what OJ was going to become. He's still on the Bills Wall of Fame, by the way. And that would have been pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. I would agree with that statement.
I'm not even mad at it.
No.
Well, Glenn, we greatly appreciate your time. Before I kick it to our commercial break, though, is there anything that you want to plug in? I do know that you had mentioned a couple of brands with your brother, and I think y'all have a podcast too. Isn't that right?
Sure. Yeah, my brother and I, we're kind of in the groundworks of trying to fire something up with On the Brain with the Goodberry brothers. He has his own show right now that he's managing. As the off season prevails, you can look forward to seeing something with us sort of culminate. But for now, follow me on X at Glenn Goodberry, Glenn_Goodberry, the Goodberry variant, as I call myself, because people were finding my brother, the Bengals fan, and like, you got an alt Bills fan account? No, it's his brother. You can find me also at buffaloonthebrain.com. I have that's where I put my merchandise up. Like, again, I'm not like a salesman by any means. I have hats and shirts available. People like it, they can go ahead and take a look, whatever. But buffaloonthebrain.com. And I have an Instagram, Buffalo on the Brain at Instagram, which is just, again, it's like an extension of my Twitter. Everything I do is on Twitter. I post about food, chicken wings, buffalo wings, pizza. If you guys have been following along, I get into that nitty gritty a little bit. And some off-season content will be a little bit more of that type of stuff. And, I appreciate you guys having me on and, all the support you guys are showing and, letting me come on and talk.
We all just like
of course. We're just a community of people who love ball.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked when you guys were opening the show and I heard that the community of people that love ball. And I really want the football community to get back to that, like fans of opposing teams talking football and not just the one-line quip trash.
Yeah.
The Stephen A. Smith stuff.
The stuff that's generating clicks now. Like, let's have, smart football conversations. And even if you feel less confident about having that type of conversation, like, I just wish people would feel confident regardless of their knowledge and expand yourself and get to know the game and love the game and pass the game on to other people too.
Yeah. So
Agreed.
All of his social stuff will be in the description of this episode. So if you want to go follow him, leave him likes, retweet, everything, that'll be where you will be able to find him.
Yep, and we're going to kick it to a word from our sponsor real quick, and then afterwards we are going to start the next segment with our Cowboys fan, Jazzlynn.
This podcast is sponsored by Hair Club.
Fellas, are you losing your hair? Hairline receding, maybe? In the past, we as men had limited options. We could either rock the grandpa hairline, shave it, or resort to a very obvious looking toupee. Well, the good news is there's an option for you now. Hair Club is a hair restoration and hair replacement service with offices spanning across the United States. Hair Club is different from other hair restoration places because they use cutting-edge technology like TrichoView hair and scalp analysis, utilizing micromagnification to examine hair and scalp health. This provides better diagnostics of your hair and determines solutions to stop your personal hair loss. Solutions range from EXT extreme hair therapy to keep and regrow your existing hair by reactivating follicles and adding volume, X-Strands hair systems that is color and texture matched to perfection to blend with the rest of your hair, or even hair transplant solutions for those who are further along in their hair loss. I personally use the X-Strand system and have never turned back. My wife thinks I'm as sexy as ever and my confidence is at an all-time high, but I'm just a podcaster, right? Well, Hair Club has become such a renowned name that even dudes like two-time NASCAR champion Joey Logano and primetime Emmy nominee Frankie Muniz both utilize Hair Club services. And if you ultimately decide on a service, be sure to use the code FOURTH, that's FOURTH, for 10% off everything you purchase. There's no better time to get your hair back than now. So fellas, boost your confidence, get that look you want, go to hairclub.com today. Welcome back to our off-season segment, the FANBASE Fiasco, where we agree that the fans are the most important part of every team. We just heard from Glenn Goodberry, who gave us an excellent rundown of the Buffalo Bills season and gave us an introduction into their fan base. Now we'll be switching it from the AFC to the NFC to a team that is similar in a lot of ways, the Dallas Cowboys. For this Dallas interview, we have my friend Jazzlynn joining us. Jazzlynn is a fanatic of all Dallas teams, and she and I share a group chat with a bunch of unhinged Dallas Maverick fans for anyone who likes basketball. Say hello to the people, Jazz.
Hey.
All right, so I don't want to just like trip you up. I didn't send you this question, but I do have to dive into something really serious real quick. How does it feel to have a genuine two-sided beef with Dez Bryant?
There is no beef. Dez Bryant is just...
What you mean? There is Wagyu beef right there. That was pound for pound. I'm taking you in that battle though. That was crazy. For those of y'all who have no idea what we're talking about, some borderline, actually I'm not even going to say borderline, some sexist remarks were made by Dez Bryant a couple months ago, and Jazz called him out on his bullshit, and it lit Twitter on fire. It was a really good time.
You know what's funny about that? He actually followed me a couple days after, or either it was like a couple days after or like a week or so after he followed me on Twitter.
Yeah, after he probably sobered up from whatever he was on, he was like, "Oh yeah, she was right, I was wrong." Yeah, no, he was out of line, out of pocket for all those comments. But I'll ask you a real serious question now. Jokes aside, how did you become a fan of the Dallas Cowboys? Just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory as a fan.
Yeah, well, I've been a fan since I was really little. I'd say maybe around 9 or so. But my mom is a big football fan, so she's the one who got me into football to begin with. We'd always watch the games. She's the one who taught me like all the basics. I kind of learned more in depth on my own though. Just as I grew older, you know, everything about the players and all the other teams and stuff like that. But to get into it, it was definitely my mom was the biggest factor.
Nice. And just real quick, are you originally from the Dallas area, or is your mom or?
Well, my mom lived there for a little bit. I'm from, it's about 4.5 hours away. It's in Midland, so it's out west. So that's where I'm
like
at.
near
But I'm
Odessa,
still in
right?
Texas. Yeah, right near Odessa.
Okay. Cool.
My family's from West Texas, so
Oh, yeah.
I kind of know the area. Yep. So kind of going with the like how you became a fan, all those types of kind of history with that. Who was your favorite player to watch throughout your lifetime?
Definitely Dez Bryant, which is hilarious.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, Dez Bryant has always been one of my favorite players to watch. Definitely my favorite receiver to watch. The X movement is just so iconic. I mean, he's just, I don't even know how to explain it, but he's definitely was my favorite player to watch. I was growing up.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you and I are relatively about the same age, and we both grew up Dallas Cowboys fans. And for me, yeah, especially like Romo era Dez was a totally different animal because it was
Yes.
anytime that back shoulder fade got thrown, you knew he was coming down with it. You knew it was going to be an easy 6, and it's nice to have that kind of a threat. And he was just really one of a kind as far as his athletic ability, his size. He's just kind of a specimen of a human. So
Yeah, exactly.
now, kind of transitioning more towards the present, how would you grade this past season as a Cowboys fan, A through F?
So I think it's kind of the obvious answer. I don't know. For me especially, it's an F. I don't know. Like I know there were so many
Tell
great
it how it
things.
is.
There were so many great things that happened during the regular season, but if we're counting the season as a whole, I mean it's an F simply because going into the playoffs, I had such high expectations for this team, and getting embarrassed like that at home was just a complete meltdown. Like, it's not justifiable to me. We had 9 All Pros on the team. We should have at least made it to the Super Bowl, which even that is it's still not a success to me because just being there is not enough, you know?
Yeah,
So,
it's a league of rings for sure. And yeah, I definitely I'm there with you. I think that it was a total failure of a season. I think if we would have at least won a playoff game, I could have maybe given us like C minus, a
yeah.
passing grade. But yeah, to get embarrassed at home the way that we did, that was brutal. And it was one of those things where in the first 5 minutes of the game, you could tell exactly how
You
it was.
knew. Yeah, and it wasn't just like, "Oh, you played this game, you played your heart out, you lost by a last-second field goal." No, you literally got stomped at your home field
Yes.
where you had been perfect all season.
By
It's
a
just
inferior opponent too.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brutal.
So one of the questions we actually have a little bit later that I'm going to push up to here is what was the worst moment of the season? Would you say that the playoff loss against the Packers was the worst thing that happened this season for Cowboys fans?
Yeah, well, I was gonna go into that if you want me to answer that. I feel like that's the obvious answer is the Green Bay game was most definitely the worst moment of the season, but if going back, like, I'd say the Bills game, James Cook running all over our defense was extremely frustrating. And it was like at that point where you could tell the team had super serious issues. Like, obviously, before we knew that the run defense was a problem, but the way James Cook had a career day against us, I mean, that was just super disheartening. And that was one of the worst moments. Like, that made me want to turn off the game. I mean, I didn't, but that was definitely one of the games that made me want to turn it off.
Yeah, I didn't turn it off for that one. I did turn it off for the Green Bay game though. I once the end of the third quarter rolled around, I was like, I'm not watching the fourth quarter. This is this is bullshit. So
Brutal. So keep trying to keep in spirits a little bit. What was your favorite moment of the season?
So my favorite moment, I had to look back on it, but my favorite moment had to be Deron Bland when he broke the pick six record on Thanksgiving. That was pretty amazing to watch. And Jim Nance on the call, with the way he called it was freaking amazing. There it is. This is history. Like that was awesome.
yeah, no, incredible call, definitely. And Duran was just such an animal this year, especially with Diggs going down. I mean, we figured he would step up because he played well last season too, but to step up in the way that he did and to be, an all pro corner, a guy who was in borderline defensive player of the year conversations. I know that they really won't, it's hard to win that as a DB, but the fact that other players were at least mentioning him in that conversation was huge.
Yeah, for sure. So that was one of my favorite moments, but also CD whenever he broke the franchise record for the most receiving yards. That was pretty cool too, just to see CD develop into the player that we know he is, being that true wide receiver one. That was also really special to watch.
For sure. So I guess if with this year being a complete failure because we couldn't even get past the first round of playoffs, I know that they plan on keeping quite a bit of the same personnel. Obviously, Dan Quinn's no longer there, but we still have McCarthy. We still have Dak. And it seems like Jerry's not really going to move away from some of these guys. If the Cowboys don't accomplish anything significant next season, I'm talking at least an NFC championship game. Should they blow it up? Should it be time?
See, I think that's super hard and it's a super layered answer just because if you have Dak, I'm assuming they extend Dak this offseason. So you extend Dak. I'm also assuming there's no trade clause again. You have to pay CD soon. You have to pay Micah soon. You've already paid Trayvon. So I mean, as a fan, you'd think you'd have to blow it up to start over and, try to rebuild your team. But if you're going to be paying these guys, I don't see how you can blow it up. Because if you're going to be locking these guys down, these guys are going to be your core to your future. So, I mean, I just think there's not a feasible way to do it if you do decide to pay these guys.
Right, yeah, and I'll be curious to see in the off season if they franchise tag anybody and what that looks like. Because I'm with you that if you're paying them, you can't blow it up because there's too many guys that are in their prime that you'd be paying. But it does beg the question, I think, next year if nothing happens and we do, let's say, really get those franchise tags in on a bunch of players, is the McCarthy era going to be over? Is the Dak era going to be over?
Yeah, which the McCarthy era is still. I think he has 1 year left on his contract, so this is essentially a prove it year, especially for McCarthy. Which I think he's done a great job as a coach, given what he's had. But it's just as a fan base, we've been 27, 28 years without winning anything. So it's super frustrating as a fan, but also I don't know if you watched his end of season conference. He was saying how they're only responsible for the years that they have been here, which is true, which is like I feel like a lot of fans are even more hard on them because they're connecting them to the Cowboys teams of the past and coaches of the past that haven't won anything. So I kind of get him there. Like we have to give a little bit of grace. It's hard to win in this league, but when you have a team who you think is as stacked as it is, you have to win something.
So kind of going with the McCarthy kind of conversation there, and you said with his contract being up at the end of the next season, what point do you think Jerry should move on from McCarthy? Is that the end of the contract, or do you think there's a couple more years you should try it out with him?
Yeah, well, I think that depends on how the season goes. If they don't make the Super Bowl, or at least as a fan, I'm not content with just the championship game, but as if I were Jerry, that'd probably be where the line would be, is you have to make it at least to the NFC championship game. And if he makes it there, then I think he gets a contract extension. But if anything less than that, I'm hoping that he'd probably be gone.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it doesn't become like a Jason Garrett issue where we just sit through a bunch of years of mediocrity. And I know that his coaching record is significantly better than Jason Garrett's was, because I believe Jason Garrett's average season was 8-8. I believe that after the year that he got fired, they were like, yeah, we averaged it out and he won as many games as he lost. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, the microcosm of his coaching tenure. And like McCarthy's better than that, but I'm afraid that we get stuck in this era of, well, he's still winning the regular season, so why would we fire him?
Yeah, I agree. And that's why the postseason is so important, because you can look at the regular season and be like, oh, the Cowboys won 12-5, but what has that gotten us? It hasn't gotten us anything. It hasn't gotten us to the championship game, hasn't gotten us to a Super Bowl. At some point, there needs to be a complete change.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, going off of coaching changes and stuff, I mean, we did see the loss of Dan Quinn here recently. That makes it sound like he died. He didn't die. For those of y'all who are listening, he's with the Commanders, but it feels like he died because he's in Washington now. But so does does losing Dan Quinn help or hurt the team?
I think it does a little bit of both. With a new scheme with Zimmer coming in, it'll probably help us. But losing Dan Quinn, I just think he had such a great relationship with the players. Like you can from Micah Parsons' comments, Juanye Thomas, his comments about Dan Quinn. He just had such a good relationship with him. I think that could be a factor into losing him. But I also think it's a good thing because maybe they got too comfortable with him. Maybe
Yeah.
they need a change of scenery with a new coach who's gonna not be super buddy with them and actually make them do their job.
Imagine that.
So with that, with Dan Quinn leaving and Mike Zimmer getting hired, how do you feel about Mike Zimmer compared to having Dan Quinn in the past?
No, I'm not too familiar with Mike Zimmer. I do know he's more of a tough coach. So he's got a reputation of being an asshole, which
Might be something we need.
is maybe something we need. I mean, we don't need a coach who's gonna hold your hand through it. Like if you're not accomplishing your job on the field, you need someone who's gonna tell you like it is. You need someone who's gonna make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do on the field. So I just think his mentality is probably gonna be what I like the most. I watched his introductory presser also. I liked what he said, which I mean, words are words, but if his words are true, then I like his I like the person who he is that would come to this team.
And then just based on what you do know of him, do you think that he's going to be a solution for Dallas's terrible run defense? And if not, what do you think is the solution to help shore up that run defense?
So I think he's going to be a good factor in that, but also we have to give him the right players. I mean, right now we don't have the right players to stop the run. We don't have any real linebackers. I mean, Leighton Vander Esch went out. We had what was his name? I can't remember.
DeMarvion Overshown.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, he'll come back. Oh, I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Actually, he'll come back, and he's really good. So I'd like to see what he does. But I'm trying. The name just slipped my mind. Who were we playing at linebacker? Oh, Marquise Bell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bell.
Yeah.
So he's a little smaller, but I mean, I thought he did a good job. But we need true linebackers in this defense.
Yeah, part of the reason why our secondary was so good and we were able to cause so many turnovers and interceptions was because we had so many additional DBs on the field, guys who are, should be strong safeties, but they're playing linebacker instead. I'm talking to you, J. Ron Kearse and yeah, Marquise Bell, and and it worked for the scheme, but yeah, whenever you have a talented running back in the backfield, it just gets so difficult, especially whenever you start getting into some of the bigger guys like Derrick Henry. As much as I love Kearse and Bell and that, they can hit wide receivers, hitting a wide receiver and hitting a guy like Derrick Henry are two totally different tasks. Hitting Aaron Jones is not the same as hitting, a slot wide receiver. So I think that I'm with you. The personnel is just not right there. Now, going off of you had mentioned Mike Zimmer being kind of a hard ass. I want to jump back to that real quick because I think that it might be beneficial. I think that part of the issue with the Dallas Cowboys in this 28-year drought has always been the culture. Everybody being a little too, as my mom would say, too big for your britches almost. And someone that I think of who is incredibly talented that I'm starting to see their ego shine in really weird ways that I don't like is Micah Parsons. And so do you think that that's problematic for him and for the team?
I think it's a little bit of both. I personally, I liked watching the podcast. Throughout the season, I liked watching it just to get a player's perspective, throughout
Sure.
the season. But there's just some things that you say and some things you don't say, and I don't think he understands that yet. Getting into the media part, which is great. I mean, he's sticking up for his team most of the time in his podcast that he does. I didn't really like having Stephen A on there, but what can you do? Sorry, there's a car outside.
No, you're fine.
But I just think if you were to make him stop, I think that's a bigger problem than having him do it, because I feel like that'll just cause more issues within Micah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with him and his personality at this point, I don't think you can stop it. It does. I was talking to Tanner actually right before you hopped on. One of the things that bothered me about the podcast, I understand the player insight and I like that. And I like that podcasts are transitioning more towards that because you're getting insight you wouldn't get before. I mean, you want to talk about expert analysis. It doesn't get any more expert than the guys who are actually playing the game. But I think about like when we got our asses whooped by the 49ers, him getting on the pod and being like, we're actually closer to them than you think.
Oh,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So like,
I get that.
Yeah, and it's just like there's a time and place to say things. I don't think he's figured that out. And also something about certain things that he does say that he probably shouldn't makes me go, what is your mindset as a player? If I get my ass whooped by a team, I'm not hopping onto the internet and telling people on a nationally recognized podcast. He gets quoted all the time on ESPN and everything else saying that we're almost as good as the team we just got absolutely mauled by. And so yeah, I just do wonder with Mike Zimmer if some of that starts to go away, if some of the headassery starts to leave.
For sure. And I get that. I was thinking too, I think it's fine if he has the podcast, but maybe in the off season, maybe not during the season. And something he said in his podcast, ironically, the one he did with CD very recently, I think it was right before the Super Bowl. But him and CD were talking, and he was basically saying, how do we get over the hump? Like, they don't understand why they can't get over the hump, which yeah, dude, I'm asking the same damn question, but you're the player, like y'all got to figure it out. Anyways, they were talking about that, and he's like, well, we just got to lock in for 7 months, and we just got to lock in. And I'm like, okay, you can say that, but you're doing a podcast every week, and there's going to be so many Cowboys fans who are like, well, what, you only want him to play football and not do anything else, not have hobbies? No, that's not.
Yes.
That's
that's so bad. Micah, do not be mad at me for that. But yes, truly, in my perfect world, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, and I also get his side of it too, because he's just a person, just like us. But
there is a human element, and it's so hard for me. Yeah. No,
I get where you're coming from. Also, like, you're a fan, you want your players to not get, like, shut off all the outside noise and don't feed into any of that. Like, for like during the season, he was talking about Dak MVP, and he was ranking players, and he was talking about like next week's matchup. And I'm like, dude, bulletin board material is a real thing. Like, and you're going to be saying these things.
After he smacked you was also kind of weird.
Yeah, I thought, and I mean, fans. And something I've learned is fans and players don't carry the same weight, like the rivalries, I guess, because the dude last year when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl was telling Lane Johnson to win the Super Bowl for the division. Like, dude, why would you say that? Like, it's just little stuff like that. Like, for us, it's a real rivalry, and there's no friendly stuff here. Like, I don't want to be your friend. Like, if you're, you know what I mean? Like, and then the players go out there, and you have a real tough rivalry between the 49ers and the Cowboys, and the Eagles and the Cowboys. And then you have Micah going on there, and giving all these players props and, having them come on the podcast, which, yeah, the Jordan Love thing, I definitely get that because, I respect Jordan Love. Like, I think he's a great player. But the dude just kicked your ass at home. Like, I would not be wanting to sit right next to him after that.
Yeah, and be buddy. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
But, yeah.
So we'll kind of move to a different player on the team. And we haven't really talked much about Dak so far, but I feel like if we're talking about the Cowboys, we almost kind of have to talk about Dak.
You gotta ask.
So with kind of the uncertainty of the future going forward with the Cowboys, kind of new personnel, do you think that Dak is going to be the answer for the team, and why or why not?
This is super hard question for a person in the fan base, especially me because I'm a huge Dak supporter. So my opinion will probably not be very popular among Cowboys fans. But I think Dak can do it. Honestly, I think Dak can be the answer. And I just don't know how you watch him last season, the MVP type season that he had, which is the best season of his career, and just think that you can just move on from him. You don't have a viable option. Like that is my biggest thing with Cowboys fans. You don't have a viable option unless you want to blow the entire thing up. Like you have who? Trey Lance? Trey Lance couldn't even beat out Brock Purdy and the 49ers. What, you want to draft a quarterback? Okay, we're picking 24. Who are you going to get at 24? They're all going to be gone. Like all the super good ones are going to be gone. And I think Dak is the answer. The things I saw Dak and CD do this season were amazing. Their connection is just growing, and Dak, it's so hard because I really do love Dak Prescott. I just think it's hard because in the playoff games, that's what really matters, the playoff games. And I can understand he threw a pick six and then he threw another pick. But Micah said it, and it's so funny because we're talking about the podcast, but Micah was just on Stephen A's podcast, and he said if they don't let up 7 points at the very beginning of the game, it's a different story. The momentum is probably on the Cowboys side, and then Dak throws a pick six, and they keep letting them score. So I think it's just hard to put all the blame on Dak, which people are fed up, and I get it.
Right.
People are super fed up, and Dak is the quarterback. So that's the easiest blame to put is on the quarterback. But when you look at the Green Bay game, it's hard to just put the blame on Dak Prescott because the defense was
defense is poor.
Yeah. They let up 3 or 7 points every time Jordan Love had the ball, So I think Dak is the answer. I think they're going to extend him. I don't see any viable other option that you have to get rid of Dak. He has a no trade clause, he's getting paid a lot of money. But if you were to cut Dak right now, there's going to be 15 teams. He's not going to be a free agent for less than a day. He's not. And that's how the quarterback position is just so hard in the NFL. And it's so hard to get a good, consistent quarterback in the NFL. You look at the NFL, the only elite quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Every other quarterback has their flaws. Every other quarterback needs help from their team. So.
And I will say this, I did just pull up Dak Prescott's playoff stats. So he's got a passer rating average of 91.8 with nearly 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions in 7 games in his playoff career. So looking at his games and just looking at his playoff record, he really hasn't been the problem in any of these playoff games. The only one you can make an argument for was the 2021 loss to San Francisco, where he only passed for 254, 1 touchdown, 1 int with a passer rating of 69.
Yeah, and we let up only like 19 points, I think, in that game.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So that game, fine, you can blame Dak Prescott. But that game, too, there was a lot of penalties in that game that brought us back. But that game, absolutely, put the blame on Dak.
Yeah, it's I'm with you in the sense that I think Dak is talented enough, because I mean we've seen significantly less talented quarterbacks win Super Bowls. I mean, Eli Manning has too, and there is not a world where you can argue that Eli Manning is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. He's not. I mean, freaking Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring, like that is Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl ring. But it's one of those things that, and we were talking about this on the last pod of, we wonder if the 49ers window is closing rapidly, because the problem is a lot of times, you look at a quarterback like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson won his ring while he was still on his cheap deal, so to speak. And it was because you had more money to be able to pay for better pieces around him. And Tom Brady won so many rings because he took less money. So then you were able to have better pieces around him. And we're looking at Dak, who he's commanding a lot of money, as he should be, because he is especially this year, he was a top 5 quarterback this year, but normally is a fringe top 10 every year and puts up great stats, but great stats only gets you so far whenever you're lacking in other places. And the first place that I think of is the run game. I mean, love Tony Pollard to death. Tony Pollard is running back 2. That is where he needs to be. And he is a weapon, someone that you 10 to 12 times a game, you unleash him in these really hard to understand looks, and you let him do these incredible things with his athleticism, but he is not an every down back. So, I mean, I guess we'll kick it to you for this. I think that part of it, is the run. How do we improve our run offense? Because we have good offensive linemen at this point whenever they're healthy, but how do we improve the run offense? What are some tangible moves for that?
It's not a super popular. Well, it might be popular, but Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a free agent. He would love
popular
to be
with
in
me.
Dallas.
Popular with me.
He would love to be in Dallas. I mean, he said so himself. The problem is, Jerry said we're going all in. Well, Jerry, are you really going to go all in? Like, are you really going to, are you really going to get these players who want to be here? What we had, which in hindsight, it's kind of dodge bullet, but Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, like, they didn't come because we didn't offer them the money. But Derrick Henry wants to be here. He said he wanted to be here. I think he is older, so I think that'd be a little bit harder also. So we don't know, but he's a dog. I mean,
oh yeah,
when he's on the field, it's just insane. Also, I don't know if Tony Pollard's going to be back. He was franchise tagged, right? Yeah, he was franchise tagged. So I don't know if they're going to get a deal done. The running backs are not getting paid what they want anymore. They're not getting the big money like we messed up with Zeke and gave him all that money. I think the solution is probably finding a running back in the draft. Maybe not, obviously not a first rounder or a second rounder. Maybe someone in the 3rd or 4th rounds. Get you a good young running back. Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick, and you see what he's doing. I mean, the way he runs hard. Every time he gets that ball, he runs hard. So if the solution is not in free agency, like a Derrick Henry, I don't think a Josh Jacobs is feasible either. But you get someone in the draft who's young and who has the talent to be that burst and be that speed on the field.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess you covered both draft and free agency as far as what to look at. But yeah, I'm with you. It's just, we need some beef. We need some beef going in between those tackles. I think we really took for granted how much of a luxury it was, even in Zeke's twilight years with us, of if you needed 2 yards, Zeke was going to get you the 2 yards. Now, was Zeke going to, in these past couple of years, was he going to rush for, 120 yards in a game? Not really. That wasn't his vibe anymore because he had lost so much speed. But I think we really took for granted those short yardage situations, and we need someone who can.
Speaking of the short yardage situations, I'd like to see Hunter Lipke more. I think he has the potential to be a really good short yardage
I agree. I'm with you on that.
What was it? What game was? I think it was the Bill. Oh yeah, it was the Bills game. He fumbled the ball, but I mean, he's a rookie. He'll get better. But I think using him in those short yardage situations would also be a really good option. Obviously, we still need, another back, but I think he'd be a great option to incorporate more into the offense in those situations.
Agreed.
So we'll kind of move past the running game. What are some other things in free agency or the draft that you would like to see for the Cowboys to improve?
I'm looking at linebacker. I need something. I need a linebacker who can stop the run. I have a name here. What was it? Let me find it. Aziz Ashire from the Titans. He's a free agent.
That dude hits.
He hits hard, and I think he's pretty good in the run too. I would like to see if they could target him. I think he had signed a 1-year deal with the Titans, but I think he'd be a really good option. Daniel Hunter from the Vikings, I think he's really good too. But those are just from free agency. Oh, you know who else? Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen is a dog. I think he's only 24 or something like that. But he is really good too.
I would love to see you guys sign Patrick Queen to get him away from the Ravens. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course you would. I don't know if Tanner disclosed it to you. Tanner is a Steelers fan, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice.
You can say if you need to. It's okay. I say it all the time. Okay, besides the linebacker, because I'm with you on that. I think linebacker, running back, are there any other positions that you think we're either weak at or shallow at and need some sort of a backing that we can target in either free agency or the draft?
I think interior D-line also. I think we could definitely target that as well. But we're not bad at cornerback, but I'd like to see Gilmore back on our team. Gilmore with Diggs and Bland for a full season, I think that'd be great. Just to, if not for his play, which I think his play was pretty good. I mean, he got burnt a couple times, but he's getting older. His leadership, I think, is something that this team needs and that the defense needs, especially with young players like Diggs and Bland.
Yeah. And I mean, something that even though he has definitely lost a step, I think in the instances of I think about DK Metcalf when he was absolutely torching Deron Bland, they put Gilmore on him instead. And Gilmore, even though he's older, he's also a lot stronger than he was whenever he was younger. And so those bigger, stronger wide receivers, he's still able to keep up with. And so I think that that's the perfect spot for him to be is however that looks, you would probably put Deron on whoever the fastest is. You probably put Diggs on whoever the best is, and then you put Stephon on whoever the biggest is, and however you move that about. But I think that those are kind of their more solidified roles as a trio.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that takes us pretty much to the end of all of our team-based questions. I think Tanner might have one more just for funsies, just because we like to learn about our fan bases. And again, for those of y'all who are listening, we're really trying to build a community here and just understand fan bases, have some fun, and talk some ball. So
yeah, let's get to it. We'll do the final question, and we'll promise to have Jordan not judge your answer too much, but we'll see what happens.
I can't promise that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll try to rail him in. But what player in your team's past do you wish you could have watched live?
I wish I could have watched live?
Yeah. So somebody you couldn't have watched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
2 players, Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin.
Troy Aikman, really?
I don't know. I like Troy Aikman. Don't judge. I can feel the judgy.
No. I mean, it's not just you. I have this same issue with my family as well because they get so lost in the sauce of the '90s era. Dallas Cowboys.
That's what it is.
That they don't really realize if you go back Troy Aikman was not a very good quarterback.
Yeah, probably.
He benefited from being an asshole and making sure he was a good leader. He's a great leader.
Yeah.
Not a very good quarterback. He benefited from having a top 3 all-time running back and a first ballot Hall of Famer wide receiver and Michael Irvin, and a nasty offensive line and a disgusting defense, and one of the greatest coaches that he benefits a lot.
Okay, well,
from
if it makes you feel better, let's take Troy Aikman off and let's just leave Michael Irvin.
No, I'm down for that. If Roger Staubach,
oh yeah,
be cool with
that'd
that?
be amazing. That'd be good.
Roger,
yeah. Okay. Okay. For
go
sure.
with Roger. Cool.
Yeah.
See,
Roger
Tanner, I was
and-
cordial, kind of.
He tried.
Michael
He tried.
and Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Roger and Michael. I like it. Yeah. We're just gonna ignore that you said Troy. We're gonna say Roger and Michael. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Jazz, for joining us today. Is there any social media you want to plug, or any projects that you're working on, or anything that you wanna let our listeners know so they know where to follow you and what you do and all that stuff?
Just my Twitter. It's Jazzlynn626. I do post a lot on there. Not just about the Cowboys, but the Mavericks. I'm almost fully a Texas sports fan. The only non-Texas sport is the Dodgers.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I feel like you knew that. You knew that.
Yeah, and I forgot about it. We're gonna ignore that because World Series champs. But
It's okay.
You're a
we're
Capitals fan, so you can't say anything.
yeah, I can't say shit because the Stars are good and the Capitals aren't. So I get it. Also, for those of y'all who are listening, yes, definitely follow Jazz. Jazz also does sometimes a post-game show if you're a basketball person and you like the Dallas Mavericks. Also, if you don't like the Dallas Mavericks but you still want to join her post-game shows, they're a ton of fun. I have promised her that I would eventually join her and help her co-host one. The last time that we had one, though, I was sick, so I was not gonna. Jazz, you invited me to that, and I felt so bad because I was like, I definitely said the next time we host one of these, I'd do it. And then I was just like, my fever's at 101 right now. I feel like shit. I'm not. But.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We'll have plenty more. I actually decided we're going to be doing them every post game, so we'll keep doing that. Probably not the Thursday, the Suns game, because I'm going to that game. But after that,
okay. Well, hell yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone who is listening at home or in your car or wherever you like to listen to your podcast. As always, remember to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Leave us a review. It would really help us to grow the show. Follow us on Twitter at @4thdown_pod and on TikTok and Instagram at Fourth Down Fiasco. And if you are interested in being on the show, voicing your opinion about the team that you love, we still have plenty of openings for correspondence for this off-season segments. And we really want to get to all 32 teams. So we hope to hear from y'all, and we will see y'all next week. Thank you so much.
Well, I like school, and I like football, and I'm gonna keep doing them both because they make me feel good.